it's much more symbiotic than the notion that the creator leads the chat. I think that it's give and take. And that's going to be a whole complicated thing. Because are you saying that every single person in the chat is part of the criminal enterprise? Where are the limits of free speech? I just feel that there's an incredible
That's going
amount
to
of
be,
overreach in this
it's going to be
document.
touchy. It's absolutely going to be a very touchy situation. And Gavel asks a great question. She said, have any of us seen either plaintiff tell their viewers to commit a crime? If so, which crime was that? And give us a place to go and back it up. If you have seen them commit a crime, I want to be able to go and see the receipts of that.
One of
Hey,
the things
Maniacs,
that is
what have you
being
got for
directly
us, bud?
stated in this is the notion that any of this is interfering with the search. I'd like to see the shape of exactly how you think commentary interferes with the search. I can't make the connection there.
I do agree with Pearl that a lot
Mhm.
of creators kind of change their view on what their chat says. But I've also watched chats that completely flipped depending on what the creator said.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it kind of goes both ways. And I don't know, for me, I think this whole thing is the people that have filed this, meaning BHB and Nick,
All of them,
you're
yeah.
probably not really well liked. Now, had
Mhm.
this been someone that was really well liked against creators that we don't like, it may have been more accepted. Because ultimately, I
doesn't
think
Go ahead, babe.
because ultimately, I think that in the end, it's about protecting families, victims, and their families. I mean, I've heard
Mhm.
some really disgusting things said about both Seth, Sebastian, Katie, and Chris.
Oh,
And
yeah, for sure.
unfortunately, at this point, it's I guess what you would call Seth's side, right? That these people have filed this and want this to stop. But
Mhm.
ultimately, our goal should be that no victims, no families should ever be dragged and accused and lied on and defamed the way that these families have.
I completely agree with that. I just
I
don't
agree.
think that these are the people to do it.
Well, and see,
But
and I
I
agree,
do
Pearl, and
agree
that's
with
the
the purpose,
problem.
though.
Yep. Yep, I agree with that. And that's the issue. I think that what's at heart here is who filed the papers, right? And I think
Mhm.
that leaves a really bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. But
Exactly.
ultimately, we have to look at, will this potentially open the door to, coming up with laws that do protect victims and their families? I think it's just something we have to ride out, right? I mean,
And
I
that's
don't know.
something we've been talking about for quite a while around here, is
Yep.
is
Right.
that very thing.
I know here I work with a group of people that are amazing, and they've been trying to get bills passed, but sometimes the language isn't right, so it's kicked back, and this has to happen, and this has to happen, because again, everybody can voice an opinion, but you also cannot get on a platform and accuse a child of committing acts against another child. And
Yeah.
everybody thinks there's a problem here. And like I
Oh,
said,
definitely.
unfortunately, yeah, I think unfortunately what's happened, like I said, and I think a lot of us agree with this, is we don't agree with, and we know some of these people that are involved in filing this suit have done much more egregious things. And we're just looking at them like, seriously?
Well, and I
You're
think that's
filing
what it
this?
is. Both, in my opinion, both sides are equally as wrong. Now, with that being said, Seth is a parent of a missing child, and so I think that's really the takeaway of all of it. That doesn't excuse anything he's done or, defend him.
I agree. I agree 100%, Melissa. I
But
do.
it's real messy. And I think what people also need to realize, only because I saw a lot of people saying it in a chat last night, that, well, what about everything so and so, as far as the plaintiffs have done to this defendant or that defendant?
Hmm.
That's really not gonna come into play for this injunction. The same
It's
way with
not a
like a protection
defense.
order,
Yep.
right? It's not about whether or not they did it to you. They did it first. They engaged. There was a back and forth. You're not the one who's filing. they are.
Mhm.
So really the only
Exactly.
thing that's going to come into play is what you have done to them. Now you're free to open up a countersuit, you're free to do your own filing, but people who think that, well, the plaintiff's behavior is going to come into play, it's really not. Like, some of it may come up, but it's really, that's not what they're there for. They're there to prove I didn't do what you're claiming I did in these
100%.
bases, and therefore this injunction should not be approved. Simple as that.
And like Naomi is
and the whole
saying
thing,
here, like truth
look over
serum.
there, not here. You know, that's
Yeah,
a problem.
that's not what this is going to be about at all, though, guys. That's
Right.
what Melissa just laid out. Like, we can agree. I agree with you 1,000%, Naomi. Like 1,000%. And there have been even worse things than that stated, but that's not what this is going to be about. And I think people are forgetting that. This isn't
Yeah.
going to be like a YouTube court of public opinion about whataboutisms or deflections or things like that.
People are
That's not how
confusing.
it's going to down.
People are saying,
People are
well,
confusing
what
the
about
notion of criminal court, where lots of
Yes.
outside things can be given as evidence of previous bad behaviour. That's nothing to do with this. This is a tort. They will only talk about what is in
what's in the
this
base?
paperwork.
Right.
And
Right. We're
I
looking at what
really
you
don't
did.
disagree with Naomi at all.
Not at all.
Some of the behaviours that have been done by some of these people previously are incredibly questionable. I'll leave it as gently
Absolutely.
put as that. But they're not going to be examined within this document. It will all come down to this paperwork. And
What's
that's really
been
what you
stated,
have to
right.
focus on.